Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. And how are you all doing? So, yeah, we are here again on a Monday. So the new program of events is Mondays is Q&A. So if you have any questions, what was that? That's something caught my eye. If you've got any questions, then tonight's the night for you to ask them. I apologise again for Wednesday's session. We were in the park. It was a fantastic session in the park, and it didn't upload. YouTube didn't allow it to upload for some reason, so I had a problem with it. So really apologise about that. The session will be on Wednesday, absolutely in the park. Let's try and get as many people as we can. If we get more than 6, obviously we can just separate you into 2 groups, but we want to get as many people in the park as possible. So anybody, text people, Facebook people, let's go, let's bring them along. It's going to be a cracking hot sunny day, and we'll have a fantastic session in the park. It'll be really good. So we have open water sessions now. The open water sessions are going. I think there's going to be one at this weekend, and more interesting than that, we have a open water course on the 4th of July. So if you fancy doing an open water course on the 4th of July, then let us know. Okay, so questions coming in. Did you already do a stream on weights and dive depth? What's the best way to fix a wetsuit? So Laura, you've missed the wetsuit on Friday. I actually fixed a wetsuit, not live, but on the video stream on Friday, Laura. So check the video from the last video, and I actually demonstrate how to fix a suit. Now, if you're asking about your suit, if you ripped your suit, then you can do a little bit more than just the gluing that I did, because your suit is lined. Okay, so the suit fix we did on Friday was smooth skin, so it was just gluing the 2 edges together. But with Laura's suit, or a lined suit with a lining on the outside, you need to put a couple of little stitches, not all the way through the rubber. So just, I don't know if I can show this. So this is a 5mm. This is 5mm rubber, and the lining on the outside. Okay, so you want to do just a little stitch just through the lining of the rubber, just to stop that running like a pair of tights. Okay, so you can glue it on the inside. So you do the same as I did on Friday. Squeeze it open, put some glue in, wait for it to go off, and pinch it together. And on the outside, just put a little stitch at each end of the rip. Okay. So Ted, I didn't do anything on weights and dive depth. It's a good question. There's quite a lot of discussion as to what weights you kind of should be using. So actually, let's go from the very basics. So as a human being that I kind of allegedly am, my body is 70% water, okay, and it's the same as everybody else. Okay? So people are mostly water, so they're about neutrally buoyant. Now, some people are just slightly heavier, and some people are slightly lighter, and it depends entirely on your body construction. So ladies tend to just be a little bit more buoyant than guys, and muscle sinks. So if you've got like heavy bones, you can be a sink. So there are ladies who sink who have got heavy bones, or and there's guys who float, okay, who haven't got heavy bones, but muscles also sink. Okay? So, but about average. Everybody's about 0. Okay? Now, if you go somewhere like Nemo, where you're not wearing a suit and you dive down at about, somewhere between, well, for me, it's about 2 meters. It can be a little bit shallower than that, and some people are maybe down to 10 meters. So about that range between 2 and 10 meters. Any buoyancy that you've got in your lungs will be lessened due to the pressure, and you'll start sinking. Okay? But you're still, when you go down to 30 meters or 50 meters or 70 meters, you're still 70% water. So your buoyancy, although it does change from person to person and with depth, without a wetsuit, you are not stupendously heavy, even at like 70 meters, okay, where the lungs are completely compressed and there's no lift and no air in the lungs to speak of, so you kind of be neutrally buoyant. As soon as you add a wetsuit, that amplifies that variation. So on the surface you're going to be more buoyant, and as you go down you're going to lose a lot more buoyancy. So when you start thinking about weights and dive depth, you need to be thinking about a little bit about who you are, okay? But more, it's going to be how deep you go in and what wetsuit you're wearing. So if you're wearing a 5mm wetsuit, you're going to be more buoyant than a 3mm wetsuit. Doesn't mean to say you need more weight, it just means you're going to be more buoyant. Okay? But if you're going deep, that wetsuit's going to be compressed a lot. So you don't want to be too much weight on, because when you get down to 70 meters, yeah, you're buoyant, your body's still neutrally buoyant-ish. But if you've got 4 kilos around your waist, you're going to be 4 kilos heavy, because the 4 kilos you're wearing to compensate for the suit at the surface is nullified at depth. So as soon as you put a wetsuit on and you compensate with weight, then you're going to be more buoyant but more heavy. Okay? So there's a balancing act with how much weight you're going to wear and the depth you're going to go to. So 5mm wetsuit is going to be more buoyant than a 3mm wetsuit, and more buoyant than a 1.5mm wetsuit. You're going to be more buoyant in the sea rather than in a lake. Okay? But then the next thing is you need to think about what you're doing. So if you're a spear fisherman and you want to lay stuck to the bottom at 5 meters, for sake of argument, then you need to wear quite a lot of weight, okay? Because you want to be stuck at the bottom quite shallow. And even spear fishermen would even have weights on their fins to keep their fins down. Okay, so you can have 0.5 kilo on each fin. Okay. Whereas if you're a pure competitive freediver, if you're going deep, you probably won't wear any weight at all, because once you've got past your buoyancy of the wetsuit, and the first few meters, you're just going to sink, and you don't want to be dragging weight back up with you. Okay. At the moment, I'm in a lake, but I am in the lake a lot, so I'm not really doing too many dives in the lake, but I'm chatting a lot, teaching a lot. So I want to be buoyant. Most of my time in the lake at the moment is on the surface, so I don't want to be finning to stay on the surface. So I've decided to be a little bit lighter, so I can chat easily and not get tired while chatting and teaching. And that makes my dives a little bit harder, but that doesn't matter because I'm not doing too many. So that's kind of the balance you're going to play. If you've got some specific questions, Ted, then you can whack them up. But it's always going to come back to who you are, where you're diving, and what you're diving. Okay. So I've given a few different ideas. So hopefully that kind of gives you a good starting point for kind of weights and dive depth. If I get contractions, they come late. Are there people who do not get any contractions? Okay, so yes, there's people who get contractions, there's people who don't get contractions, there's people who get fake contractions, and people who only get real contractions. So And can you get unconscious without any contractions? So that's a kind of follow-up question to the first question. So it's about awareness, and obviously when you first hold your breath, go free diving, you know nothing about your free diving because you've never done it before. It's literally your first time you've done it. And this is why we really push the point that the breath hold is totally irrelevant when you start out, because you've got a lot of other stuff you've got to learn before you worry about how long you can hold your breath. Okay, technique, or what you're doing, or the games you're playing, or the equipment you're using. You've got loads of stuff. So the first few breath holds, you're not gonna even think about like going into a place where there's contractions involved. Okay, so that when you've learnt the games and played with your equipment and got an idea of where you are and what you're doing, then you're like 20 or 30 breath holds in. So then you can start looking at your breath hold capacity. And while you're playing these games and working out who you are as a free diver, your first few free dives, you'll know whether you have contractions or not. And some people don't have contractions at all. It just doesn't happen. Usually it tends to be younger divers, but it's not a hard and fast rule. But don't get into the mindset that you can use your contractions to time your dive. You can in some instances, but sometimes you'll have contractions early, sometimes you'll have them late, sometimes you won't have them at all. Yeah, so if you're going, well, I'm gonna go till 22 contractions and then I'll come up. Well, that dive you might not have any, and then yes, you can black out without having contractions. So they're a useful tool, but they're not infallible. Okay, they're a useful tool, but not infallible. Now, that brings us on to fake contractions. Now, fake contractions sounds like they're fake. They are not brought on by O2 or CO2. Okay, they're not brought on by the amount of CO2 you got, or the lack of O2. These are called fake contractions, and there are ways to find out if they're fake, and the easiest is to have your buddy, when you've had a couple of contractions, then your buddy leans over and says, okay, you're coming up in 10, 9, 8, and as soon as they say that, contractions disappear. That's right, I'm coming up now. And you come up, and they're fake contractions. Okay, and it's so it's a tension thing, it's a mental thing, and when we say it's a mental thing, people kind of really underrate the power of the mind in these situations. So if I say it's just a mental thing, I can ignore them. No, they're actually truly there, but they're faking the fact that they're not brought on by CO2. They're definitely there, and they're definitely hard to work through. But if somebody says, you've got 10 seconds and you're coming up, and they disappear, then they're clearly not brought on by CO2, because you haven't changed the CO2. You've done is knowing that you're coming up in a few seconds time. So so there are contractions. They're different for everyone. I did hear of a guy who's an international level. I met him. I know him. An international level diver who he said, well, I just hold my breath until 122 contractions and then I come up, whatever the time is. And you just go, wow, that's intense. That's super intense. And his dives were fairly consistent and fairly long, but that's pretty harsh. I don't know whether I could enjoy free diving if I had to endure 122 contractions. On that point, you're unlikely to have a blackout if you have contractions, if you only have like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, a few. Yeah. So what we say as a general rule when we're in no tanks as a club, we'll say no more than 4 contractions. First contraction you might not notice, it just comes and goes. Second one, there's a contraction. by which time you've got to put your hands on the wall or come up, or if you're swimming or whatever you've got to do. So 4 contractions. And this is a really nice baseline, because if you're having a hard session, they'll come earlier. If you're having a good session, they'll come a bit later. But you're never actually pushing if you stick to 4. Okay. Alicia, sorry. Is there a way to calculate the weight of a neck weight we need? Yes, there is. Neck weights. Okay, so I've got heavy legs. Okay. So when I push and glide, my legs kind of drag. Now, obviously, I've got buoyancy in my chest, in my lungs, and that's why you wear a neck weight, to put the weight further forwards, to try and kind of bring your legs up. But I still got heavy legs, so if I wear too heavy a neck weight, I just sink. I never balance up. Okay, I just sink. Whereas ladies tend to have hips, okay, which kind of bring their legs up. Especially if you're in a wetsuit, so you tend to find ladies float with their legs up, guys float with their legs down. So the first thing you want to kind of look at, or no, not the first thing, the thing as you're working out what size neck weight you need, is how do you float. There's no point in just putting more and more weight on your neck, in my case, because I'll sink before leveling out. Okay. So bear that in mind as you're calculating how much weight you need on neck weight. Most people need something like 1.8. Used to be, I used to think 2, but I think it's possibly a bit heavy for most people now. So about 1.8, 1.6, 1.8. Now, what you got to bear in mind is when you haven't got a neck weight at all, which is we insist people start with no neck weight. When you've got no neck weight at all, you are about probably, on average, 1.6 to 1.8 kilos away from your perfect weight. Okay. Then you get a neck weight. And now, to start with, you might as well just have a 1.8 kilos. Because even if you're a 1.6 kilo person, you're only 0.2 kilos away from your ideal weight. With no neck weight, you're 1.6 kilos away from your perfect weight. So you're much closer with just a 1.8 kilo weight. Much closer to where you're going to be. Yeah. So that's where you should just start with a neck weight of 1.8. As you move forwards and you get, and you maybe, especially if you're making a neck weight, you can remake them, you can change them. You have to get used to having a neck weight before you can test the weight you need in a neck weight. So you've got to have one. 1.8, you've got to have one. Use it, get used to it. Say, ladies have always swim down because their hips float up, okay? With a neck weight, that means they're going to hit the floor. So they've got to get used to having a neck weight, keeping them down, maybe even half a kilo on their hips or a kilo on their hips and 1 on their neck, and balance it out, okay? But once they're used to swimming flat, then they can test how much weight they can have. Okay? So, Alicia, try it. If you make one, we've got the video on the YouTube video on there. When we're allowed people in around the house, I'll do another neck weight workshop. So you're welcome to come over and build one with us. The reason I do that is because we all sit around, drink lots of tea. Kiri or Freya makes some cakes, and we have a bit of a social. But in the time it takes me to make one neck weight, 8 people have made neck weights. So there's it's 8 times as efficient with time, and we have a bit of a social. So when the neck weight workshops happen, you're welcome to come over and do that. What was I going to say? So you build a neck weight, you get used to it, and once you've got a neck weight, you push and glide. Okay? And you see how your dive finishes, whether dive finishes with your legs dragging or with your legs floating. Okay? And then you can kind of change your neck weight. But, and this is the important thing, if you take a full breath of air, it will affect your buoyancy a lot. Now, if you're in a deep pool up to here, you cannot take a full breath of air without packing. So if you're into water up to here and you take your breath and you go, you're going to be heavier than if you're in the waters up to here and you take a full breath. Or down to here, if it's a shallow pool, it might be just at waist height. And you're going to take a much bigger breath. So working out what kind of neck weight you want, it's where you're going to be using it. Because taking that extra little bit of air in the breath makes a huge difference to how buoyant you are. And people buy it, make a neck weight or buy a neck weight or balance themselves out during for club sessions, and then they do a competition and put a wetsuit on, a pool suit. That's going to make a massive difference to which neck weight you want. So get one to start with, 1.6. I'd say for you 1.6. That'd be fine for you to be getting on with. And then think, well, when do I need to use it? How am I going to use it? Am I going to wear a wetsuit? Am I going to be doing it in a deep pool? Am I going to be doing a shallow pool? Do I pack? And usually when we're playing games in the pool, it's like, oh, I've got to go. That's not a full breath. But if you're doing a time top or your big photo shoot, I'm going to be taking such a breath, okay, which is going to be different weighting required. Okay, so it's not quite as cut and dried for neck weights as which size neck weight do I want. But there is a way to calculate it. Well, it's not calculate it. It's push and glide. So we put the rings out and you just push off the side of the wall and see how you float. Ladies, I say you want to try maybe a ½ kilo on your waist as well as balancing your neck weight. So Ted, dang, 20 is about my max. About 20 is about my max I've dealt with. Contractions. It's like, that's just random. 20 what? 20 contractions. Yeah. But don't deal with them. Just come up because there's no real advantage from it. If you do something like lazy tables, you will learn or teach your subconscious to not have fake contractions. That's literally the point of lazy tables, to kind of get around that kind of the thought that it's a long dive. Ted, training flippers, love it. We should call them flippers, actually. We shouldn't call them fins. Fish have fins, mammals have flippers. So being mammals, these carbon fiber flippers, these are carbon fiber flippers. We should all call them flippers. So monoflipper, even though I call it a monoflapper, it should be called a flipper. Anyway, training flippers, where do we get them? Well, if you're in England, you get them from us. No thanks. I import them from Russia. You can get them on various fin swimming websites. So Waterway Fins or finswimmers.com or something like that. They have dolphin training fins, rubber fins, flippers. I'm going to call them flippers. I'm going to try and call them flippers from now on. So training flippers are dolphin rubber fins, and they're especially floppy to force you to fin correctly. The people who make them have no idea why they sell so many of them. They made a mold in, like, I don't know, the 70s or something from some really bad kids fins, snorkeling flippers, and just like they started selling in the 80s, and they have no idea why people buy so many of them, because I've spoken to them, and they said, I said, oh, do you need a minimum order? And they went, no, why would you do a minimum order? I said, yeah, because I want to import them to England. And they was like, why would you want to import them to England? Don't worry about it. Anyway, so finswimmers.com or something like that. Most fin swimming clubs use training fins. Yeah. Right, so that's it. I just like to say again, we're nearly there already. That was your Q&A. We are having some open water sessions, so we have been going to Gildenborough. So this is Arnold going through the bus. I don't like this version; it's a bit too green. The one I put on Facebook was much better. But I tell you what, Raisbury, the crayfish are incredible. There's just so many crayfish. They are crazy amounts of crayfish. So the crayfish are there. We're getting some lovely crayfish interactions, and the carp. Massive carp in Raisbury. They've cut down the trees where they used to hide, and we've found the new place where the carp hide. So we're kind of playing with the carp and trying to get them used to interactions. I did a video, it must have been 15 years ago, about the carp in Raisbury, and we got real close to them. And because we were doing this film of them, they just got used to us, and they were coming up to us, and it was really good film. And it didn't go viral, but it had a fair few thousand hits. And I found out somebody had put it on a fishing website. Nothing to do with free diving, just the fishing. People wanted to see these carp in their natural environment. Okay, so that's the end of the Q&A for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday. Everybody is welcome. Gabby, I think Gabby is doing a dry session in Brighton tomorrow. The weather looks good, so hopefully you're going to go for it. Any questions, Gabs, just you kind of ask me. I really wanted you to see last week's dry session because it was really good. Had some really good exercises, and I did explain everything. In the back of my mind, I was thinking Gabby's going to use these next week in the Brighton dry session, but it didn't upload. I'm afraid. So Wednesday we're going to do a live session again at 7:30 in the park, Richmond Park. Come along, be there if you're in the area, or try and do it in your local park while watching it live if you're not in the area. And Friday we're going to talk about films. I'm going to talk about films. Films that have inspired me, films that have changed my life, with regards to freediving, obviously. And yeah, that's it. So hope this has been useful, and I'll see you on Wednesday or Friday. Don't forget, we've got a session on Saturday. I haven't given any details yet because hopefully tomorrow Raisbury are going to give us the thumbs up to a big group session. So maybe 12 people in the water, Raisbury on Saturday. I'm also doing some small group lessons. So if you want to get in the water, have a lesson, let me know. If you just want to come along to Raisbury and hopefully do a group session. So